I'm going to show you how to make the male figure as part of the Automoblox car. So I'll go ahead and make a new part, make a sketch. I'm going to start out by drawing a rectangle. I'll dimension it. It should be 0.575 by 0.575. I'll go ahead and finish that and extrude it a height of 0.3. And I'll make a new sketch on top of that surface. And we're going to use an ellipse. So the first thing I want to do is get a point. I'll find the center of that square. Use my ellipse tool to create an ellipse. Then I'll come back in and I'll dimension the ellipse. In the major axis, it should be 0.236. And in the minor axis, it should be 0.155. I'll finish that sketch and I'll go ahead and extrude that ellipse up, 0.155. Then I'll make a new sketch on that surface. I'll use my offset tool to offset the ellipse and dimension it away from the object, 0.05. I'll finish that. And I will use the extrude tool to extrude it up. And we want both of them. So it should be 0.84 high. And then we want to taper the extrusion, so I'll click more and I'll put a taper of about 7 on our sketch, and that looks right. So I'll go ahead and click OK. Next thing we're going to want to do is put a work axis in the middle of this. So I'll click axis. I'll go down here to this bottom ellipse and it'll allow me to select that axis and put it in. And then we'll want to create a new sketch on this surface of the rectangle at the bottom. From there, I will go ahead and right click on this and say I want to slice the graphics, and it'll slice those graphics for me so I can better get to some of these points I need to get to. Create a line up from the side of this object. I'm just kind of estimating the distance of that line right now. Same thing from the other side.
What?
Go ahead and click.
The hole?
Put a dimension on that of 1.2 inches. And then the object from to the center, I click project geometry and project that axis. The dimension from this to the center should be 0.6. And I'll go ahead and draw a line across this object, and I'll trim off that portion of the line, and it will balance out my geometry for me now. So the next thing I need to do is create the arc. Can I curve this? So I'll use my arc tool, come up inside of my object, and I'll click close to where I think the top of that is. I can finish the sketch. I'll go in here and extrude. We want an intersect extrusion, so it's right here. I'm going to say I want to do it symmetric so it gets both sides of it, and I'll click all of these sketches. I'm going to want to just put in a dimension of something ridiculous here, like 5 inches on either side to make sure it gets everything we need. You can go ahead and click finish and notice how now it's curved that top surface for us. The next thing you're going to want to do is put a work plane, and I'll use this axis to help me do that. I'll click work plane, then I'll click on the axis. I'll come into the origin, then I'll find the plane I want to work within. I want to work in that plane. See what we've got here, and we want it to be on that axis. So I'll click and put that work plane in. I'll create a sketch on that plane. And then I'll go ahead and I'll project some of this geometry to my work plane. And then I'll go ahead and create a simplistic kind of eyeball version of what the head should look like of this object. So I'm going to click and make a little arc here. You can kind of eyeball this from what you have. Just make it look proportional. Go up a little bit. Click another arc.
Hey, what's up? Hey.
Again, I'll just kind of make this look correct. That looks good there. Then I can go ahead and use my line tool to draw my line back down to the bottom. And then I'll draw it back over to this side where the sketch started to make sure I have a closed loop. I'll finish it, and then I can revolve that object around that axis. You can see how it has sketched the head of the object on there. I can go ahead and right click over here in my work plane and turn off the visibility, turn off the visibility of my work axis. And if you want to go in and adjust this, if you don't think it looks correctly, you can adjust the head and make it the way you want it. Go ahead and save this when you're done in your Automoblox folder as mail.